Hi, I'm Max Brooks. I write a lot of books about zombies and Bigfoot, World War One, and for kids, I've even written about Minecraft. But in all of them, I think you can pretty much tell I'm not a chill guy. Uh, I'm always trying to figure out the world around me, and I'm trying to break down complex issues to understand them before I break down. I've wanted to do this channel for some time, and now with Russia's attack on Ukraine, I can't afford to wait. So this is my very first video, and it tries to break down what it means to fight in cities with the top urban warfare expert in the world. So let's get started with video number 1 of Max Brooks Breaks Down. I am talking to my friend John Spencer, who is not here because he's my friend. He is here because he is one of the top urban warfare experts in the world. He is a colonel in the California National Guard. He was a major in the United States Army. He's done 2 combat tours in Iraq. He is the chair of the Urban Warfare Studies Project at the Modern War Institute at West Point. John, uh, let's talk about cities, and let's talk about why you call them the Great Equalizer, because we're always hearing about how the Russian military way outnumbers the Ukrainians, but you're saying once they get into the cities, David can beat Goliath.
Absolutely, Max. It's called the Great Equalizer because the urban terrain or a city prevents any military from doing what it needs to do to be very powerful. Combined arms, keeping their forces together, using their aerial assets, and especially on the modern battlefield, all the ISR, all the drones. If you think about it, you can't see into cities. It's really hard. There's thousands of hiding spots. We want any military, it doesn't matter who you are, wants to hit who they're fighting as far away as possible. And that's the modern battlefield. I can hit you from hundreds of miles away. Well, that's why combat in cities is so hard, is because I had to get close. I had to get the whites of their eyes. I had to get close to be able to find out where they are. And the defender always has the advantage in general. In the urban, tenfold. You think about it, the concrete, there's very few guns that can punch through concrete. You try to flatten buildings, things like that, but I could go on for a long time why the cities are the Great Equalizer. It doesn't necessarily you don't have to be stronger than the enemy. You need 5 times the amount of forces to attack an urban area than the one person with a very small weapon inside that urban terrain. That's the figure that we kind of come to. You need 5 times that, because that's how difficult it is.
5 to 1, so 5 to 1 advantage. Now, but let's say you're not just talking to me. Let's say somehow people in the Ukraine see this and you're talking to them, and we can get this translated into Ukrainian. Let's say that the average civilian, not even the ones who are able to pick up a gun or a Molotov cocktail, let's say someone like me wants to defend their block, their neighborhood, and it's just them and a few of their neighbors, and all they have maybe are shovels or hammers or maybe their bare hands. What can these unarmed civilians do to contribute to the fight?
Yeah, absolutely. The number one thing they can do is to block streets. The military needs to get somewhere, and every obstacle that can be put in front of them to slow them down, which makes them vulnerable. If they have to get out of their vehicles, then that's it. Any civilian can start blocking the roads, block every street, block every alley, especially bridges. Militaries have to cross bridges to get in there. And there are lots of bridges in Ukraine, and the military will come to a dead halt if they can't cross that bridge. They can park their cars, pull the batteries out of their cars, break off their keys, make every inch difficult. Even if you're not firing or resisting, like we said, there's so much you can do. And I honestly think that, and this is historic, it helps with your mental health too, right? This is scary. You have people scared to death, and they're trying to maintain hope. But one of the things that increases that is just sitting around waiting for something to happen. They can stay busy by, stockpiling supplies, water, food, putting out barriers. Like you said, it can be anything, bricks, cars, trash, you name it, just start piling it up in the streets.
So that's a fascinating angle. I didn't think about that because, of course, trying to shock and awe the enemy into submission is a big deal. So Putin wants the Ukrainians to feel helpless. He wants them to feel like there's nothing I can do as these tanks are bearing down on me. But what you're saying is, if you just park a bus and you and your friends just fill it with rubble, if someone has a dump truck, you just park it in the street and break the key off and pull out the battery. Anything you can do to block those roads not only gives them an advantage tactically, but psychologically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's about them feeling like they have the power, and they do. Ukrainians have the power. I mean, hope is the greatest weapon on any battlefield. They need to keep hope that they can survive, they can win. But yes, they actually have all the power. Don't let this image of this large army coming to get you scare you to where you won't resist. This is about and this is what I'm trying to say. The history of urban warfare shows that they have all the power right now. Putin, they want to get somewhere. They want to take the capital, and they could face death by 1,000 cuts. Isn't they have to believe that their small effort will have huge impacts.
Now, you'd mentioned to me before when we talked about roadblocks, you'd also mentioned in case you need to use the road, there's something you can make called a serpentine maze, which allows you to use the road, but it stops an enemy from roaring through at 50 miles an hour. It slows them down. Talk about what is the serpentine style maze?
Yeah. So, I mean, most people, no matter where you live, you've been through some type of checkpoint. It's called an S pattern or a serpentine. I just call it an S pattern for short. It is blocking a road so that the vehicle has to slow down to turn. It still can get through. So lots of these paths need to stay open so civilians can get, that aren't part of the resistance or get supplies around. But if you make this barricade that causes a vehicle to turn, exactly like you just said, if I'm the military, I want to get to where I'm going as fast. Speed is security. If you can just slow them down, and every time they turn, now they're vulnerable. They're slow. You could, volley fire Molotov cocktails at them. There's all kinds of things you can do, but yeah, absolutely. That S is historic, very powerful. Your thing is to slow them down, stop them. It could be helping somebody else attack them, but you're just slowing them down.
Well, that is a very good point about just speed, because as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but Putin was gambling on a blitzkrieg. He was gambling just like Hitler before him, who could just race through Belgium, Holland, Paris, and be there before anybody had any time. So you're saying that time is Putin's enemy. And the more time the Ukrainians can buy themselves, even if it's just by causing a traffic jam, that's time for the West to get itself together to aid Ukraine. And it's time for Russian dissent to grow at home.
Absolutely. Time is everything, especially in this situation. Putin is running out of time to where his own country will allow him to continue the effort. They're running out of time to even logistically, supply themselves, as you've seen vehicles running out of gas. A tank burns like a gallon a mile. It needs critical amounts of gas. If you slow them down and their engine's still running, you are winning. But yes, the more time that the Russians aren't able to do what they want to do, the closer we are to winning. Like you said, the closer we are to getting aid. And you've seen all these countries saying, I'm going to send these weapons that are vital to the Ukrainian military. But aid comes in other forms too. The more time, the more aid will come, the stronger you can make it. And I think you have a great point about, they made a huge mistake thinking that they could take Ukraine quickly through something like Blitzkrieg. If you think about, World War II, the Maginot Line, right? Don't build a defensive line that anybody can just drive around. You can't drive around cities. Most of the time, they're in critical road junctions, and there's no way around. And oh, by the way, the mud right now is forcing the Russian military to the road. So take that to their advantage and let them try to go off the road into the mud, and you're buying time.
Right. And we could talk about this for hours about the great historical irony is what saved the Soviet Union in World War II was trading space for time, was nullifying Blitzkrieg, and ironically, Stalingrad, the greatest urban battle of all time. But I want to talk more about civilians. Specifically, if you could talk directly to Ukrainian civilians who say are trapped and they can't get to a government bomb shelter and they're looking for a safe place, what should they be looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So the underground has always been the refuge of people protecting civilians because there's nothing that can strike down there. So if there's any existing underground facilities where they are, get there. And then even if there's not, pick a building that can withstand a massive amount of pressure. You think about earthquakes and hurricanes. A lot of these things are very common sense to people who experience natural disasters already. You want a building that's made of heavy concrete, like usually like the government buildings, the banks, things like that. Get inside those. And if they have a basement, that's the best place for you. Get it. If it's, you can't get there, get into something like a tub, something that's going to withstand violence, avoid things that won't. Glass buildings are really become weapons in themselves. That glass explodes and becomes shrapnel. Buildings that burn. There's going to be massive fires, unfortunately, if this gets a lot worse, like some people think. You have to think about fire safety as well, but things will burn very quickly. So I really pray for them. I hope they know that the world knows that they're fighting for us, for freedom. But they have to get to safety, and I would want to get my family to safety.
Right. Well, I think you make a good point. I think they know, and I think they appreciate what people like you are doing. And we should also state for the record, I think the Russians know what you're doing too, because not only did the Modern War Institute site go down a few days ago, now we don't know, as you said, maybe it wasn't hacked, maybe it was just traffic, but it did go down. And we know directly you've gotten some threats on German Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm fine with that. I've been around for a while. Clearly, Russia doesn't want these types of messages getting to the Ukrainian people. And luckily, there's an army of people trying to help them, whether that's turning, things that they can't get access to social media into flyers, what you're doing here, Max. But yeah, the DNS attacks, clearly something's going on is we can't keep some things up. I can't, I'm getting some weird things happening. Clearly Russia knows that if these type of messages get to Ukrainian people, their worst nightmares are going to start happening.
Well, which brings up the point, if this interview does go live and if the day after both our social media sites go down, or if somehow there's a scandal, some sort of lascivious thing with you and me and a sheep, we know who's behind it.
That's right.
Well, John, I want to thank you for taking the time. Clearly, everybody cares about what you have to say, and with good reason. So keep on doing what you're doing, and thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed listening to John Spencer and want to know more, you can pre-order his book, Connected Soldiers, on Amazon. And if you don't like what I had to say, then in the words of the defenders of Snake Island, go. What? Oh, if you actually liked it, then please, by all means, follow me and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time.